I saw a post the other day. It said, every time I want to apologize for being too much, I think about the Mad Hatter. I saw a post the other day and it said, every time I want to apologize for being too much, I think about when the Mad Hatter tells Alice, "You lost your muchness. You used to be much muchier." Y'all, I think I lost my muchness along the way. How about you? Welcome back to Soulful Wonderings, the space where we search for meaning in everyday life and honor the lessons that help us grow. I'm Heather and I'm your host. But before we get started, we would love it if you would subscribe to our podcast. You can also head over to our socials and follow us there, and we will be sure and put all of that in the show notes. You know, I suspect there have been times in my life when I've been a bit much. In fact, I think I know that. But there's a struggle inside me about how much I want to be or feel like I can be. I remember as a kid, it was all about fitting in, right? Kids can be so cruel. Truth is, adults can too. But we moved a lot, so I was, kind of perpetually the new kid. I was always trying to find my way into friend groups or cliques, and those had been formed for years. So there was definitely history, with them, things you didn't understand, as much as they might accept you and allow you to be part of their group and befriend you and be kind. There were always things they talked about that you didn't understand or you didn't know, just because there was this history, the inside jokes, all the things. So I think I always felt kind of a bit out of step, like I was just on the edge of the circle. And if I could just find my way through, if I could just cross over that edge, that rim, that I would find acceptance and love. I'd find real friends. And I was close with my family, but you kind of didn't have a choice when you moved around that much. They were the only constant. And there were issues. I mean, who gets along with their whole family all the time? I also had an overachieving sister who I knew I could never compete with. There was a bit of acceptance about that, and throughout my life, she was the brain, I was the creative one. That's just kind of how we were labeled. What's weird is, even though that label gave me a certain amount of grace, I'm going to say, for my weirdness, it also came with pressure. Do you know what I mean? When there was a call for someone creative or something that needed to be done that was creative, that meant you were up. Creative, where you at? And if whatever you created didn't meet expectations, then you were a failure. You heard things like, "I thought you were creative." But I was also a kid and often asked to do things that I had never done before and really didn't know how to do. Probably shouldn't be left to my own devices to figure out at that age. But you're the creative one, right? So do it. And then people would just watch as you failed. It was great. So I learned to shrink. I learned to try not to stand out, even though there were parts of me at times that just longed to just let go and sing or dance or be silly or take the lead on a project that wasn't creative. But back in my day, you know what? Lock that shit down, or you don't fit in. That's just how it worked. I'm not sure that it's changed that much. The kids at the new school would actually know you were a freak instead of just speculating. So what do? You learn to shrink. That's what I did. I learned to try not to stand out, even though there were parts of me that longed to just let go and sing or dance or be silly. And I'm going to be honest, there was a point where I was almost forced to do that one time. I have vague memories of this. I don't know if I've blocked it out. I was in high school. I changed schools again. My mom signed me up for choir. Have we talked about this? I think we talked about this. Let's not do this. So I learned to shrink. I think that's probably what a lot of people have done. You you shrink where you're not noticed. Maybe I can just fade into the background. You'd learned, let me just try not to stand out. Even though there were parts of me, there were times when I absolutely longed to just let go, to sing, to dance, to be silly, or maybe to even take the lead on a project that wasn't creative. There's a novel thought. But in my day, the silly, the singing, the dancing, the not following along to your label, you had to lock that shit down. Or you know what? You didn't fit in. And the kids at the new school that you had just shown up at would actually know you were a freak instead of just speculating. And of course, heaven forbid it get back to my perfect sister and I made her look bad. That did happen a couple times. But I mean, she was over there playing Little Miss Perfect like an Oscar winner. You know what I'm saying? The crazy thing is, I found out later, after she died, later. The thing is, I found out later, like, after she died later, that she wanted to be a singer. And look, she was always singing and playing the piano, so I knew she liked it. I didn't know how far she had gone, though, that's actually what she wanted to do. So I found out later, like after she died later, that she really did want to be a singer. And I kind of remember that when we were younger. I mean, she was always singing and playing piano and whatnot. And our mom had forced us into lessons, which I regret now that I can't remember how to play. I've even tried, and that muscle memory is not really coming back to me. I would love if it would. I would love if I had taken that more seriously. But at the time, I wanted to play basketball. I didn't have the same interest in it that she did. And I mean, we were in a small town. Actually, making it as a singer would be very difficult. And back then, I mean, you didn't have the internet. You didn't have YouTube where you could make videos and do your thing. So, if you try to kind of go I'm going to say the traditional route into it, that wasn't going to be easy from there. But I can remember a couple of times that she actually, I guess, worked as a promoter. We knew a couple of bands from different areas that we brought them to our area, and so she was acting kind of as a promoter, I guess. I think my parents saw it as promoter, producer. They were backing her in it because it's kind of like with me and my creative thing. You're never going to make money at that. You're never going to be successful as a singer. So do the thing that'll make you money. So she did that, but you could tell she wasn't happy. But again, I found out after that she went so far as to audition for some singing roles. There's a theme park style place in Arkansas, which was near where we lived. I had zero idea she had done that. I had no idea she could gone that far, and she had really, really put herself out there that way. But here's the truth. She was being labeled too. That's what happens, right? You get a label. You are good at something, or you show an aptitude at something, and suddenly that's just what you are, and that's what everyone considers you. All your life, those same people will identify or associate you with that identity. So she was the smart, perfect, successful, always had to have her shit together. No one gave her the room to kind of put her elbows out and be creative as well. And I mean, how weird, that wouldn't be odd for us to have similar talents. Maybe I have a little more or leaned a little more creative than she did. Not that I was more creative than she was. I just kind of leaned that way a little more. That doesn't mean she didn't have the same talent or thoughts. Just because I lean a little more creative doesn't mean I can't handle, business things and organization and some of the stuff she did, So it's funny, huh? All of us get judged at some point, don't we? Anyway, I spent much of my life kind of feeling out of step. It took me getting into adulthood before I think I really started finding groups where I could be me, where my muchiness wasn't too much. But even then, I was still a bit guarded. I think that was my conditioning. My brain would tell me to shrink. Say don't rock the boat, go along, so they love you. We said that already, didn't we? But it didn't change, even with age and wisdom. When you're a kid, um, people will tell you, just wait, school doesn't last forever. You'll find your people. And I'm here to tell you, kids that are dicks grow up to be adults that are dicks, whether that's at work or in college or at church. And yes, I said church because they can be anywhere, really. So even though you may have kind of more recourse and not have to worry as much about getting into trouble like you did in school, except for HR, I guess. A dick is a dick. So if that's who they are, then it really doesn't matter what your age is. You're going to encounter them. So we kind of keep searching, don't we? We look for our people. And people say, I've said it, just said it, that they feel out of step. They never quite fit in. But as I grow and heal, I'm not so sure out of step is the correct phrase. I mean, I never felt like I truly fit in. But lo and behold, as shared before, neither did my perfect sister. We all feel it at some point, don't we? That we aren't allowed to be who we really are. But what if we aren't too much? What if we're just in the wrong room? There were people in the back of that class that smiled when you were the new kid and you were in the front and you were being muchier. They enjoyed it. After all, they were probably a little muchy too. So I think many of us learned, though, to shrink, to survive. I think we learned that we were being labeled instead of being seen. And that we often mistook safety for belonging. And maybe we didn't lose our muchness. Maybe we just learned where it wasn't safe to use it. So the thing I think I'm learning how maybe we didn't lose our muchness. Maybe we just learned where it wasn't safe to use it. I think the thing I've been learning is kind of just how to stretch again. I'm just slowly remembering how to take up space again, how to be me, to be too much and not apologize for it. How to release the conditioning and be willing, like I said, to just take up space again, to know that that's allowed. What if that's all people like my sister needed to see, to be a singer? Maybe she just needed to see someone being their muchiest and living their best life. And that's all it took. And I want to be clear, this isn't about throwing all self-awareness out the window. Okay? It's not about being much everywhere all the time, no matter the room. Some rooms don't require your full volume. Some spaces are going to ask for listening instead of leading. And sometimes dialing it back is not shrinking, it's respect. And the difference there is intention. Maybe asking yourself, am I making myself smaller because I'm afraid of being rejected? Or am I choosing how I show up because I respect myself, the space, and the people in it? One of those is self-abandonment, the other is self-protection. So I want to leave you with a question. Where did you learn to shrink? Maybe more importantly, who benefited from you being smaller? And then ask yourself, what part of me has been waiting for permission to take up space again? No journaling homework here, just noticing. I don't think healing is about being everything everywhere. I think it's about knowing yourself well enough to choose, to know when to bring your whole self forward and when to hold parts of yourself close, not out of fear, but out of care. Your muchness doesn't disappear when you don't choose it. It waits. It rests. It shows up where it's welcome. Maybe that's the real work. Not shrinking or proving, but learning how to honor who you are without giving yourself away. Knowing when to take up space and when to hold it is part of trusting yourself. You don't lose yourself by choosing the room. You honor yourself. Your muchness isn't gone. It just knows where it belongs now.